Welcome to the Explainer. Now, if you're using an AI coding assistant, you already know it can be a total game changer. But let's be honest, you also know it can be incredibly frustrating. Well, today we're going to fix that. We are diving deep into the techniques that will take you from a frustrated prompter to an expert manager of your AI partner. So let's kick things off with a feeling I'm sure you know all too well. You spend like 10 minutes carefully explaining a really complex task. You lay out all the requirements, and the AI seems to totally get it. But then, as things get a little more complicated, it starts making weird mistakes, forgetting your first instructions, and you feel like you have to start all over again. It's just maddening, right? Well, here's the thing. It's not you, and it's not a bug. It's actually a core feature of how these tools are designed to work. You see, the root of this whole problem, it all comes down to a core technical limitation, something that's running the show behind the scenes of every single interaction you have with the AI. It's called the context window, and really understanding this is the absolute first step to mastering your assistant. So think of the context window as basically the AI's short-term memory. The key thing to remember is it's not infinite. As you can see here, it's the maximum amount of text, and that includes both what you type and what it writes back, that the AI can hold in its head in a single conversation. Okay, to really get a handle on this, let's use a super simple analogy. I want you to imagine this context window is just a bucket. When you fire up a brand new chat, that bucket is completely empty, totally ready to be filled. Now, with every single thing you type, every question you ask, every line of code it spits back at you, you're basically pouring more and more information into that bucket. A simple hello world might be a tiny drop, but a big, complex function, that's a huge splash. It all adds up, and that bucket just gets fuller and fuller. So what happens when that bucket is about to overflow? You'd think it would just stop, right? But nope. To make more space, it has to do this auto-compact thing. It summarizes the oldest parts of your conversation, which of course are often your first and most important instructions. But here's the problem. A summary is never, ever as good as the real thing. Those crucial little details, they get lost. And that is exactly why your assistant seems to forget things. It's not really forgetting, its memory is just getting squished and it's losing the important stuff. All right, so how do we fix this leaky bucket? Let's dive into our first pro-level workflow. The big idea here is to stop being just a prompter and start acting like a project architect. This means we are going to separate the planning from the actual execution. So in default mode, and this is how most of us start out, you ask for something and the AI just jumps right into coding. That's fine for small one-off things. But for anything complex, it's a total recipe for disaster because that whole planning chat fills up the memory bucket before the real work even starts. But the architect approach, totally different. You flip the AI into a planning mode, where its only job is to talk through the project with you and create a super detailed blueprint. No code yet, just a rock-solid plan. And the process here is actually super simple. First, you tell your assistant to go into planning mode. Then, you just have a conversation, a back and forth, to nail down all the requirements. The key is that the AI's final output isn't code. It's a markdown file. Let's call it a plan.md that captures the entire project. You look it over, you approve it, and only then do you move on. Okay, now for the real magic trick. This is the most important part of the whole process. Once that plan.md file is done and you've given it the thumbs up, that whole conversation you had to create it, it's not needed anymore. It's just noise that's going to clog up the context window. So you do something that feels a little crazy. You tell the assistant to clear the context completely. You start a totally fresh session. That memory bucket, it's completely empty. And your very first prompt is just this. Implement the following plan, and then you paste in the entire contents of your approved plan.md. Now, the AI's entire focus, its entire short-term memory, is dedicated to one single thing, perfectly executing your blueprint. No more distractions, no more forgotten details. Let's move on to our second strategy, which builds right on top of the first one. And this one, well, this takes you from being an architect to being a full-on project manager. You see, sometimes a task is just so big, like analyzing a huge existing code base, that it needs its own dedicated focus. This is where something called sub-agents comes into play. Just think of your main AI chat as the manager. A sub-agent, that's a specialist the manager hires for one specific, really intensive job. It's like calling it a contractor for one very particular task. So imagine you need the AI to get its head around your entire, say, 10,000 line code base before it adds a new feature. Well, instead of just pasting all that code into your main chat, which would instantly overflow that memory bucket, the manager agent delegates the task. It hands the job off to a specialized sub-agent, sometimes called an explore or analysis agent. And here's the critical part. This sub-agent spins up its own totally separate memory bucket. It can fill that bucket to the absolute brim, analyzing all that code, doing all the heavy lifting without touching your main conversation at all.
And here is the absolute key. When that sub-agent is finished, it doesn't just dump everything back to the manager. Nope. It comes back with a concise, final report. A quick summary. That summary uses just a tiny fraction of your main agent's precious context, leaving it wide open for the high-level strategy and the actual coding. It's just brilliant delegation.
So when you start putting all these techniques together, your whole workflow just transforms. You kick things off with planning mode to get that solid blueprint. You hand off any heavy analysis to sub-agents to keep your main chat clean. You always clear the context before you start coding. And you can even take it a step further and ask the AI to write and run tests to verify its own work. It becomes a complete, reliable system. And really, the big takeaway here is this. That context window, it's not some bug you have to get frustrated with. It's a resource that you can manage. By actively taking control with planning and delegation, you turn your AI from a kind of unreliable, forgetful intern into a powerful, focused, and incredibly capable partner. You're the manager now, not just the prompter. So you've become the manager, right? You're guiding your AI to create really reliable code. But what's the ultimate test of that partnership? Well, it's making sure the code you create can actually survive out there in the real world. That means getting it ready to run anywhere, on any server. And this is the perfect next complex task to tackle with your AI partner. And kicking off this new conversation with your AI starts with understanding these two core ideas: images and containers. Now, you don't have to become an expert overnight. The goal is just to get them well enough to manage your AI while it builds them. The easiest way to think about it is an image is the final blueprint for your app. All the code, all the libraries, everything it needs. A container is just that blueprint brought to life, a running application. Your next job as manager is to guide your AI to create that perfect image. Look, your code is smart now because you've learned how to manage its creator. But the real question is, are your management skills ready for what comes next? Can you apply those same principles, planning, delegation, context control, to guide your AI through the maze of cloud deployment? That's really the next frontier for any developer working with AI. Thanks for watching.